Hello again, everyone. Welcome back for some more chaos. We're going to finish up chapter 8 today. 8 of 12. I keep on, you guys want a little, I don't know. It might discourage you guys, some of you, to see how much is left. It's about half and half, so. But there's quite a few pages of pictures in there, so. And, okay, let me show you something. Because Tom O'Neill, he did his homework. So this little bit, all sources. So this isn't even part of the story. All sources. Quite a few pictures. So we're definitely more than halfway. I know it's 12 chapters, but it's not consistent how long. They're not all the same length, obviously, because I've been able to do some of them in 2 parts, some of them in 3 parts. I could do a whole chapter at a time, but that would take us a very long time. So let's finish up chapter 8 then. And if I didn't say so, welcome back. I think I did, but. All right, so the first little section here is called A Strange Little Guy. Now, did you guys know Manson's only 5'2"? He is and definitely strange, so guessing we're gonna be talking about him right here, because he is definitely a strange little man. Okay, Richard Caballero refused to discuss the case with me. The answer is no thank you, he said on the phone. I asked him why not. The answer is no thank you, he said. I tried one more time, saying I wanted to discuss the sale of the Atkins story. The answer is no thank you, he shouted, hanging up the phone. At least he said thank you all 3 times, right? You gotta give him that. Oh, sorry guys, I hope the little shadow behind me is distracting me. I hope it's not distracting you. Lawrence Schiller wouldn't talk to me either, and Jerry Cohen had died by his own hand in 1993. That's unfortunate. Looking into those 2 men, I found that throughout the 60s, their journalism had often gotten them mixed up in furtive arrangements. In 67, Schiller had published the first book to attack the conspiracy theorists around the JFK assassination. I told y'all there were some interlinking factors between this story and my favorite conspiracy theory ever. I don't think it's a theory. Biggest conspiracy of all time is what I call it, the JFK assassination. Staunchly supporting the official explanation of JFK's death. I question anyone who is the lone gunman theory person. I'll never believe it. Never. Maybe it's because that movie JFK came out in my formative years. I remember a friend of mine doing a report on it in our history class my senior year, which I think it came out in 93, and I was a senior in high school in 95. I guess that tells you how old I am, but who cares? It's fine. Y'all can tell how old I am by looking at me, I think. Okay. I'm not trying to not go on so many tangents, but, I'm just keeping it real. I feel like a lot of you guys, especially the ones that have stuck around for this book, I feel like we're friends at this point, so you're getting the real me. I edit out, I don't know why, but you guys cannot imagine how many yawns, hiccups, and face scratches I have to edit out. I didn't realize it. I don't know. It's like something about, is it this corner? It's not terribly dark. I don't know. It's usually when I'm sitting here and just saying the word yawn, it's probably going to make me yawn. It is interesting though. I'm going to miss my old, where I sat in my office. I felt like that location made my neck look a little bit thinner. Okay. I said no tangents, and here I am, off on a ridiculous tangent. Forgive me. No more tangents. We'll see. I'll try. That same year, foreshadowing his feat at Sybil Brand, Schiller wormed his way into the Dallas hospital room of Jack Ruby, who'd killed Kennedy's assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald. The reporter emerged with the only recording ever made of Ruby's confessing to the murder. What? I didn't think they did get that. I don't know if y'all have heard of Dorothy Kilgallen, but some people think she is the only one that ever spoke to him, and she also died mysteriously, but there are other people like, she was a drunk, it wasn't mysterious at all, she drank too much vodka or something. I don't know. Tangent number 1. I'm going to put up a count for them. I'm trying. I did not know about this. Did you all know about this guy? I mean, it was on live TV. People saw him do it, so I don't know that it really needed confession. But who was behind it? Okay, I lied. I just lied. I'm going on another tangent right now. I could probably not tell you where I heard it, but I heard there was another island, let's just say, of nefarious activity with young people way back then, and that Jack Ruby was involved in that, and that he would rather go out for doing this and have his name remembered for taking out, the assassin of the President of the United States, the alleged assassin, than be connected with that. I'll try to figure out where I watched something on YouTube. Y'all know I'm a YouTube junkie. I watch so many documentaries. That's why I need a tinfoil hat. I actually bought, I'm staying on track. I bought a tinfoil hat. That's all I'm going to say. But I threw it away because it was too small. OMG, I gotta stop. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm actually jumping on a plane tomorrow morning. I have been running around town getting stuff ready, and it's a day trip. It's one overnight to Denver. It shouldn't take that much craziness, but it has. Just getting all the little stuff done that I need to do. And I vowed that I would get at least one episode filmed, because it does take a while to edit this stuff. And I figured I'd have some downtime at the airport and in the airplane that perhaps I could get a little editing done there. Because I'm going to be in Denver with my siblings. Like I said, just 2 days. Well, one overnight, 2 days. Ooh, but guess what? Oh my gosh, I am such a liar. I am going on another tangent. I don't know, some of you are not true crime people because, well, maybe the ones of you that are here for chaos are, but not most of my normal viewers. But anyways, we're going to be in Denver for a funeral, some of my siblings and I, and we've got to go to Boulder for some other thing. But I'm trying to talk my brother into, because he's the one driving. Why am I talking about this? It does not matter. It's so uninteresting. I'm flying. 3 of my other siblings are driving. And the reason I'm not driving with them is because we're going on a long road trip the next week to Yellowstone, and I am already going to be on the road 10 days for that. And I cannot even imagine working in another long road trip, especially, I love my siblings, but no. I'm going to fly and enjoy some peace and quiet, which is very rare in my life. And oh my gosh, we're 8 minutes in and I've read 2 paragraphs. Forgive me. Anyways, I didn't even say, we're driving from Denver, or Littleton, to Boulder. And if you're a true crime junkie like me, you know it's in Boulder. It's the John Benet Ramsey murder house. I'm totally making my brother take me by there. And one of my sisters is totally on board for making him do this with us. And so I will report back to you. It's completely different than it was in 1996 or whatever year that was. I think 1996. Anyways, maybe I'll have somebody snap a picture of me in front of the murder house and I'll bring it back for you guys. If you're interested, if you're not, I'll bring it back anyways. You don't have to look at it. It's 5 second up on the screen pic. But I'm excited about it. I'm a nerd. I am a nerd. That's all there is to it. Okay, onward. If I can find where I was. Okay, so the reporter emerged with the only recording ever made of Ruby confessing to the murder. Schiller released it on vinyl that year. He probably made a killing off of that financially too. Notably, he taped Ruby saying that he hadn't killed Oswald as part of the conspiracy. Well, there's a little wrinkle in the story, thus shoring up the government's official line. How does that shore up anything if millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people, I don't know, people saw it live on television, him shooting Oswald? Make it make sense. I cannot. Okay. During the congressional investigation of the CIA's illegal domestic operations, the agency admitted that it had more than 250 assets in the American media in the 1960s. That is Project Mockingbird, and that, I believe, is still going on. I don't know. Alex Jones is a polarizing dude, and so is Tucker Carlson, but I I do enjoy listening to them. And if you guys want to go watch a somewhat recent interview Tucker Carlson did of Alex Jones, he was talking about how the CIA goes to like producers and stuff of current TV shows, like, well, X-Files isn't current, but like that, somewhat recent, and tells them things to insert into their storylines. Now, if that's not Project Mockingbird continuing on, I mean, what is it? What is it? The CIA has their sticky little fingers in everything. That is the conclusion I am coming to. They just are in everything, trying to shift our perception of pretty much everything. Allegedly, my opinion, but yeah, not good. Their identities were never revealed. Mark Lane, who'd written the first book questioning the findings of the Warren Commission, the investigative committee appointed by President Lyndon Johnson, which concluded that Kennedy was killed by a lone assassin, told me he couldn't prove it, but that he believed Schiller was one of those assets. Another connection between all these crazy people. And Jerry Cohen, too. Lane believed they'd been tasked with disrupting investigations of the Kennedy assassination. Now, if you've done any investigations into that on your own, I know there's probably thousands, tens of thousands of books written on it, articles, documentaries, movies. A lot of people that had info mysteriously went away. Maybe these guys were part of it. I don't know. I'm not saying that, but I'm not saying that, if you catch my drift. So we had a lot of power. Lane believed they'd been tasked with disrupting investigations of the Kennedy assassination. Okay, I already said that. In testimony before Congress, Lane charged that the CIA had paid Cohen to smear him in the press. I could never prove that, but I did find a trove of documents in the National Archives showing that Schiller had been acting as an informant for the FBI in 1967 and 1968. So it shows you all the interweaving of the CIA, the FBI. I think the movies throw us off by saying that the cops don't want them around, because at least in LA in the late 60s, they were definitely working together, at least in some capacity. Sharing confidential information with the Bureau about Mark Lane's sources. His work as an informant continued under the cloak of his reporting for Life magazine, which was later named in a 1977 Rolling Stone story as one of the publications that provided CIA employees with cover. So yeah, I've heard that National Geographic, now it sounds like Rolling Stone. An interesting side story is that a lot of photographers and stuff that went all over the world taking pictures for National Geographic were not so kosher. They were there doing other things as well. Like, they could have been assets as well. I believe that they were, and once again, I don't know where I heard it, but it would not surprise me in the slightest, because nothing does anymore, as I have said many times. Schiller tracked down authorities who were investigating potential malfeasance in the Kennedy assassination, using his press credentials to obtain interviews and then sharing his findings with the FBI. He'd written to J. Edgar Hoover to say he was in possession of the names and whereabouts of the confidential informant whom Mr. Mark Lane refused to identify in his testimony to the Warren Commission. So that's pretty shady, because, authors and journalists, their sources are pretty sacred to them. They really don't give them up. And I think if they do, then nobody's ever going to be a source for them again. Why would they if they don't feel safe, So that's pretty shady, but once again, not surprising. Schiller dug up information about officials looking into the CIA's involvement in the Kennedy assassination. According to memos, the FBI eagerly awaited Schiller's information. I bet they did. Which, again, if the Kennedy assassination was what the official report says, then why does the FBI care? Don't they just want the truth? No, we know that they don't. Well, I opine that they don't. But obviously, there's something to hide, because if you just wanted the truth out there, then you would just, I read somewhere, I don't know, I can't give credit for the quote, but it said, the truth is like a lion, set it free and it'll defend itself. But these people do not want the truth. They want the truth, according to them. Which, once again, do we know anything that is true? Did y'all ever read that book, 1984? It comes closer to being nonfiction every day. They change the story to make it fit what they want. It's not good, but it sounds like they've been doing it all along, probably as far as back as the written word goes. Others had made similar claims about Cohen and Schiller. Pete Noyes, a TV investigative reporter who'd written a book on the assassination of President Kennedy, and his brother Robert, said that Cohen, a friend, had pressured him to abandon the project. If Noyes dropped the publication of the book, Cohen promised him a plum job at the LA Times. Noyes declined the offer, but he was disturbed by how much Cohen knew about his unpublished work. Yeah, if it's unpublished, how does he know anything about it? I mean, it's not like you can hack, even in those days, you could hack into something. Like, if you had unpublished work, it was probably typed on a typewriter on paper. So how would you know that? I mean, I guess it could be in a computer, but that would make me feel pretty uneasy as well. A few weeks later, he was fired from his job at CBS News. Oh, interesting. It's not Manson. It says right here, Cohen was a strange little guy, Noyes told me. Here I thought the strange little guy was Manson, but no, it's Cohen. Let's see what this guy's first name is. I'm trying to keep it all straight. Cohen and Schiller. Jerry Cohen. Strange little guy. He wondered why his one-time friend tried to squash his book, and he suspected that Cohen had played a role in his firing too. Although he could never prove it, Noyes was fairly certain that Cohen was a CIA asset. I guess everybody but you and me is a CIA asset, guys, unless some of you are. Are some of you CIA assets? I am not. But that's what a CIA asset would say, isn't it? Okay, guys, next section's called Coda. What did Atkins really say? Susan Atkins' testimony was the blueprint for the official narrative of the murders. But if it was shaped to serve the prosecution, how much of it should we believe? If there was an unvarnished account, a sense of what Atkins said about the crimes before she came under the control of her attorneys, and the DA's office, it's the one she shared with her cellmate, Ronnie Howard. We'll never get to hear that account verbatim, but there's something that comes close. In the files of LAPD Lieutenant Paul LePage, I found notes from detectives' November 18th, 1969 interview with Howard. So this is August, September, October, 3 months after the crimes. They contain several inconsistencies with what would become Atkins' official story, which, I mean, I was going to say, it's probably closer to the truth what she told her little jailhouse friend. But then again, people in jail, well, criminals in general, who knows if they're ever telling the truth. But did she embellish some things for clout, or, just to impress this girl? Wouldn't impress most of us, but it might if you're a criminal and you're in jail and you're trying to, establish a pecking order, whatever, however that works. I don't know. I've never been in jail, knock on wood. And by the time Howard was re-interviewed 7 days later, after Caballero's insertion in the case, she changed what she said, and all of these discrepancies were gone. To my knowledge, they've never been reported. Okay, so hopefully he's gonna report them here. So Caballero was a slick guy, it sounds like, too, which a lot of lawyers probably are. Not all, but a lot. First, here it goes. First, Atkins told Howard that Sharon Tate died in her bedroom on the bed. Now, I've seen pictures of that bed after the fact with Roman Polanski sitting there, and the bed is clean as a whistle, so that doesn't, I don't think that's true. Once again, unless the whole thing was staged, which some people believe. Later, she was said to have died in the living room. And some people think she died on the front porch, or she was at least out there, because there's blood evidence out there as well. At least if you read that one thing that I keep trying to get you guys to read. Second, she said the killers were tripping on LSD the night of the Tate murders. If that were true, the defense could have argued that they had diminished capacity, thus sparing them the gas chamber. Did they really do the gas chamber, or are they just using that as like a metaphor? I'm gonna have to look that up. Incidentally, I've heard that you can opt to be taken out by a firing squad if it's your time and you're on death row. Is that crazy? In 2025, you can be taken out of this world by firing squad. I find it interesting. It's not in every state. I'll have to look up what state that is, but it's a recent thing. Bugliosi, wanting to eliminate that possibility, made Linda Kasabian testify on multiple occasions that no one took any drugs on the nights of the murders. In a 2009 documentary, Kasabian contradicted her testimony, saying that all the killers had taken speed on the night of the Tate murders. It seemed like they were impaired much of the time. Just stuff I've read, which, once again, there's so many conflicting things out there. What can you believe at this point? Would it surprise you if they were all high? It would not surprise me. Third, Atkins said that they killed the LaBianca couple because of something to do with blackmail, although she couldn't elaborate. She said she participated in those murders too. She was the one who left the kitchen fork protruding from Lino LaBianca's belly. In the official narrative, Atkins was in the car that brought the killers to the LaBiancas, but she never went inside the house. What's just as remarkable is everything that Howard didn't mention in that first interview. She said nothing about Helter Skelter, Manson's race war, except to note that those words were left in blood on the LaBianca refrigerator, which is interesting because that's basically the entire prosecution's case against them, is that they were trying to kick that off. Yeah. So you would think if that was what started the whole, or that was the motivation behind these crimes, that she would not have left that out when she was telling her jailhouse buddy about it. She made no mention, in other words, of a racist motive, black people, holes in the desert, Armageddon, or the Beatles, all of which became central to Bugliosi's prosecution. And as you might expect by now, she made no mention of Manson's instructing anyone to go anywhere or kill anyone, all of which would be repeated incessantly in Atkins' later accounts. As for Atkins' most heinous act, stabbing a Sharon Tate as she begged for the life of her baby, Howard was much more equivocal about it than we've been led to believe. She said that Atkins didn't admit she did the stabbing on the Tate deal. And yet the next time Howard talked, after Caballero had arrived, she said without reservation that Atkins had boasted about stabbing Tate in nauseating detail. Now, I'm just putting something out there. If they're willing to make deals, especially undocumented deals, obviously let Manson out time and time again when he should have stayed in jail because of his being a parolee and committing crimes. Might they have extended some little unofficial deal to Howard? Like, if you say this, maybe you'll get a lighter sentence, or you'll get out early, or something like that. I'm not saying that's what happened, but once again, it would not surprise me. So yeah. And yet, the next time Howard talked, after Caballero had arrived, she said without reservation that Atkins had boasted about stabbing Tate in nauseating detail. So that's quite a big flip. Think of all the unanswered questions that have swirled around the Manson case for 50 years now. Just a few. Why did the killers target strangers for murder? Were they strangers? Why would previously nonviolent kids, except for Atkins, none of them had a criminal record, except for maybe stealing cars and stuff? Why would they kill for Manson on command and with such abandon and lack of remorse? And if Manson hoped to ignite a world-ending race war, which once again sounds ridiculous when you hear it come out of your mouth, why didn't he order more killings, since the 2 nights of murder didn't trigger that war? That's a great question. Bugliosi made a fortune and achieved worldwide fame from his prosecution of the Manson family and Helter Skelter. And even writing that book launched him on to writing lots of other books. I mean, Helter Skelter, I've read time and time again, is the number one, like the best-selling true crime book of all, in history. But that's not the only book he wrote. He wrote many books, and I don't think he would have gotten those book deals without first having written Helter Skelter. Over the years, many people in law enforcement have told me that they never believed the Helter Skelter motive. Their theories were always more mundane. They would have made thinner gruel for Bugliosi's book. Of course, sensationalism sells. Sex sells, blood sells. As they say in journalism, if it bleeds, it leads, right? Because it fascinates people, not because they want to do, well, I assume, not because they want to commit these crimes themselves, but for myself, what interests me in true crime is what happened to these people to make them do stuff like this, and how can it be prevented in the future? That's why I am interested in it. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Eventually, all the killers settled on a story similar to the one that Atkins told after her attorney swap, and all of them have sought parole releases based on that story's thesis, that they were not responsible for their actions because they were under Manson's control. Many of the psychiatrists who testified said that the defendants' minds had been so decimated by LSD that they likely had no way of discerning real memories from false ones. Now, was that because of the LSD? Well, or was it because they were MK Ultra'd, which does involve LSD? I mean, the CIA was pretty obsessed with LSD back in the 60s and what we could learn from it, how we could make it useful in getting information out of people, or making Manchurian candidate type assassins and stuff. And that's not just me saying that. There's, as much was destroyed about it, there's still enough out there to piece together, what their aims were, and they were not good. They may not have even known if they were at either house on the nights of the killings, let alone whether they participated in the murders. Now that seems hard to believe. I mean, I don't know anything anymore, guys. I don't know what LSD does to the mind. All I know is that it's not good. I have never touched it, and I never plan to. The only person who never endorsed Atkins' final story and the Helter Skelter motive along with it was Manson. Manson didn't endorse her story. That's interesting. It seemed like he was able to talk to her when he was representing himself, and she withdrew her testimony and stuff after talking to him. So you would think that the stuff that she said was stuff that he told her to say, but it doesn't sound like it from here. After his conviction, he said little about the crimes except that he didn't know what his children were going to do before they did it, and that he had no explanation for why they'd done it. Sure, Charlie, sure. Curiously, Bugliosi admitted in one of his last interviews that he was pretty certain Manson never believed in Helter Skelter. In one of his last interviews. Well, isn't that convenient, Bugliosi? This book that you built a whole case on this and then wrote a book on it, and then toward the end of his life said, he probably didn't really believe in it. Maybe he didn't believe in it, but he made his family believe in it and got them to do crazy stuff because of it. It's hard to believe anyone would believe in it, to be perfectly honest. It's pretty out there. I think everyone who participated in the murders bought the Helter Skelter theory, hook, line, and sinker, he told Rolling Stone. But did Manson himself believe in all this ridiculous, preposterous stuff about all of them living in a bottomless pit in the desert while a worldwide war went on outside? I think without knowing that he did not. Okay, so that's what I basically just said. maybe Manson just used that to influence his cult members to do heinous things. Is that what he's saying? That's what it sounds like. Unfortunately, the reporter didn't follow up with the obvious rejoinder. If the murders weren't committed to incite a race war, what was the reason? What was the reason? What's the reason? Because the FBI and or the CIA wanted some crazy thing to end the hippie movement and all of the anti-war activism that went along with it. I don't know. Could be. As I mentioned before, there was a persistent rumor among followers of the case, including the detectives who'd investigated it, that Manson had visited the Tate house after the murders, arriving with some unknown companion, Reeve Whitson, to restage the crime scene. If it's true that Susan Atkins' story was the product of careful sculpting by the DA's office, the prospect of Manson's visitation isn't nearly as far-fetched as it would be otherwise. And I think the linchpin is Reeve Whitson, of which we will never know. It's kind of one of those, it's going to be one of those enduring cases that we just never know the answer to, I believe. I mean, same thing. JonBenet Ramsey, are we ever going to know? Madeleine McCann, are we ever going to know? It's the ones that you just can't figure out. And it's like they take on this sort of, I don't know, life of their own, because all the evidence that could be obtained is obtained. The technology was what it was back then, and you can't, unless time travel becomes a thing, we're not going to know. And if time travel does become a thing, that's not what we're going to care about, let's be honest. We'll go back and take out Hitler, right? Sorry, tangent. One of the more perplexing clues to that end is a pair of eyeglasses recovered from Tate's living room after the murders. They didn't belong to any of the victims. They didn't belong to any of the murderers. They didn't seem to belong to anyone, period. Detectives never explained them to anyone's satisfaction. In a 1986 book called Manson in His Own Words, ostensibly co-written by Manson and an ex-con named Newell Emmons, Manson mentioned these glasses, saying that he went to the Cielo house with an unnamed conspirator and took elaborate measures to rearrange the crime scene. My partner had an old pair of eyeglasses, which we often used as a magnifying glass or a device to start a fire when matches weren't available, he wrote. We carefully wiped the glasses free of prints and dropped them on the floor so that when discovered, they would be a misleading clue for the police. Now, who knows if that's even true? Like I said, if you've ever heard any interviews of Manson, they're very weird. And I mean, surely he knew about the glasses at some point, being in jail for decades. And probably just made up some story to go along with it. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe he's telling the truth. That's always possible too. To be clear, Manson in His Own Words is a far from unimpeachable source. Yeah, it's written by two convicts. Emmons wrote the book years after a series of prison interviews with Manson, but he wasn't allowed to record these or take notes at the time. So hopefully he had a really good memory. Manson himself vaguely disavowed the book, although not before appearing with Emmons in several televised interviews to promote it. How did that happen? How did they get in the jail or the prison to interview him? That's interesting. I wonder if we can find any of those. I was inclined to take a kinder view toward it when I found in the LASO files a kite or prison note. Did y'all know that a little prison note is called a kite? Like the thing you fly up in the sky. From Manson to Linda Kasabian, his coded language is hard to decipher, but he may have been admitting that he left the glasses at the Cielo house after the murders. The note seems to have been delivered in an effort to persuade Kasabian not to make a deal with the prosecution. Okay, so here's what the letter said. It said, so what if I did make you do it? I don't care if you're a snitch. You've been a lying bitch. I did what I did because I felt it was to be done, and I even put the eyeglasses to where I could show you. This is written really weird. There's no punctuation or anything. I could show you all are blind and give them shorty. Each time you Okay, here's what it says. SKIW. I'm not sure what that means. Skew. Each time you skew down, you think of Sharon Tate and know that's, oh my gosh, it's hard to read something without punctuation. And know that's you if I can't get to my Nancy's love. That is a weird, weird letter. But like I said, he talks in code, he writes in code. Like I said, I thought he was the strange little guy. Take that for what it's worth, guys. The next lines have been underlined by police. Tell Gold to hold the boneyard and no bones outside the yard. Whatever that means. While it's always difficult to decode anything Manson said or wrote, this note isn't as impenetrable as others. Gold was Manson's nickname for one of his family favorites, Nancy Pittman, whom he had referred to as Nancy a few lines earlier. In early 1970, Pittman paid frequent visits to all the defendants in jail, doing Manson's bidding. I mean, they really were under his spell if, they're not implicated in this, but yet they're going from jail to get instructions and carry them out. She told Linda Kasabian not to turn state's evidence. She told Atkins to stop cooperating with the prosecution. Shorty refers to Shorty Shea, the Spawn Ranch caretaker whom the family had killed and buried in a remote part of the property. As mentioned earlier, his remains weren't recovered until 1977. To hazard a guess, Manson was warning Kasabian not to flip and instructing her to tell Gold when next she visited that Shorty Shea's bones were not to be removed from the boneyard at the Spawn Ranch where he was buried. Manson even may have been referring to other victims' buried remains at the ranch. It's long been suspected that more victims of the family are buried somewhere. While the implications of note are not sensational, what's more important to me is Manson's apparent admission that he returned to the Tate house after the murders and planted the glasses. I expected investigators to dismiss the possibility of Manson's meddling at the scene, but some were open to it. Late in my reporting, I spoke with Danny Bowser, a retired lieutenant from the LAPD homicide squad who'd never given an interview about Manson. In 1965, Bowser had been appointed the first commander of the LAPD's new Special Investigation Section, or SIS, an elite high-tech unit that served as professional witnesses by running covert surveillance on known criminals. Now, that's interesting because prior to this, okay, so this is 1965, Reeve Whitson was obviously doing some kind of surveillance on known criminals. Could he have been part of that? Special Investigation Section. Its goal was to gather such a preponderance of evidence that convictions were all but guaranteed and plea bargains all but impossible. And the SIS was a furtive bunch. For a decade, the LAPD never even publicly acknowledged its existence. So for a decade, if it started in 1965, they didn't acknowledge it till 1975. And the Manson murders were smack in the middle of that. That could have been part of it too. We weren't even connected to a division, Bowser told the LA Times in 1988. They carried us on the roster at different places, different times. That was the only time Bowser ever commented about the SIS. A second piece reported the SIS was called the Death Squad within the LAPD because its members had killed 34 suspects since 1965. The secretive 20-man unit had a controversial policy. It refused to intervene to stop crimes, even those in which people's lives were at stake. Now, I would think that the Manson murders absolutely would fall into that category if they thought they were watching Manson for who knows what else, and they had intel that this was going to happen, but they weren't going to stop it. That could be absolutely part of this. It's the right time, it's the right place, it's the right police department. There's a lot of puzzle pieces that fit together there. The Times investigation documented numerous instances in which well-armed teams of SIS detectives stood by watching as victims were threatened with death and sometimes physically harmed by criminals who could have been arrested beforehand, like Manson. The later piece in the Times reported that even within the LAPD, SIS officers are known as a fearsome and mysterious bunch. Some of their colleagues repeat unsubstantiated and vigorously denied rumors of SIS officers conspiring to shoot suspects and celebrating gunfights with kill parties. Who are these people? I know a handful of cops, and I can't see any of them participating in something crazy like this. I'd heard from other detectives that after Sharon Tate's murder, the LAPD assigned Bowser to serve as Roman Polanski's bodyguard. Why would such an elite officer get such a low-level task? Polanski confirmed the assignment in his 1984 autobiography, Roman by Polanski, writing that Bowser had been the first detective to interview him and had shadowed his every move. He added somewhat cryptically that Bowser wasn't strictly speaking on the investigative side of the case. One of his responsibilities was to keep in touch with me. That's weird. Why then was his name never mentioned in Helter Skelter or at the trial? That's a good question. I had trouble finding a way to talk to Bowser. Finally, in 2008, I settled on a time-honored reportorial tactic. I showed up at his doorstep unannounced. He lived way out in Inyo County, 5 hours from LA, at the end of a quiet suburban street. It's kind of troubling that you can just find these people and show up at their house. Bowser refused to let me in, saying he wouldn't talk to me. Despite his advanced age, he cut an imposing figure. He had a glass eye, and I later learned that his real eye had been shot out. But I kept him standing in his doorway by blurting out questions about the Tate crime scene, hoping to convince him that I'd done my homework. It worked, kind of. Bowser would shut the door on me, only to open it again to say more. Whenever he seemed to have said his piece, he'd find something else to add. For the next 30 minutes, as the sprinklers chirped next door and a TV blared from inside his house, he told me things that he insisted he'd never share outside the SIS. Most of our stilted conversation was about the homicide investigation report for the Tate case, a document that was pretty much the basis of the prosecution's physical evidence. Bowser said it was littered with inaccuracies. The detectives in the homicide unit, he claimed, left things behind, things they'd missed. An awful lot of evidence didn't get processed. At least 2 key pieces of physical evidence weren't in fact discovered at the crime scene the morning of the murders, although more than a dozen police officers and forensic investigators had testified that they had been. That's odd. One was that mysterious pair of eyeglasses. Bowser told me he found those himself 5 entire days after the murders. That contradicted the homicide report, which said the glasses had been located and taken into custody on August 9th. Gently, I suggested that he might be mistaken, but the homicide report suggested otherwise. What do you think, that's the Bible? He snorted. You believe the stuff you read in there? He made sure I didn't jump to the conclusion that he, or any of the SIS agents working under him, had done anything improper. He said that his guys didn't write reports, nor did they report to anyone. Nevertheless, if what he said was true, then critical elements of the prosecution's presentation of the crime scene were inaccurate. Included, just for starters, would be the means of entry into the house, the way the victims were bound, and by whom. Everything evil over there kind of connects, he added. If he was accurate, then all those cops, his colleagues at the LAPD, had lied under oath, I reminded him. Did you see any of my guys on the stand, he asked. And he added that I wouldn't find any of his guys named in the police reports either. And he was right, because they didn't exist. It was a secret division, right? Toward the end, Bowser toyed with giving me a proper interview. I was going to give you my number, he said, before shutting the door again, to protect you from stumbling over your dick. But I changed my mind. I waited a good 10 minutes, but the door remained closed this time, and I finally left. 2 years later, in 2010, he died. As I drove away, my mind was awash with possibilities. I'd always wondered about the crime scene discrepancies. I wondered if Bowser, just by alleging that the crime scene had been presented incorrectly, or possibly even staged, was pointing to other reasons for the murders, or other people perhaps involved in covering up what had really happened. I had to think of Reeve Whitson and his claim of having gone to the crime scene after the murders, but before the police had arrived. Yeah, my brain keeps going back to that. It's such a weird little piece of the puzzle. All of this is compelling evidence of a different scenario for the crimes, but I'll be the first to admit that it proves nothing for certain. I do believe it's possible that there was another reason for the Tate LaBianca murders, and I do believe the crime scene suggests the sequence of events as we know it is wrong. But our best chance to learn the truth vanished in November 1969, when the DA's office put Susan Atkins' testimony on lockdown. The question remaining was why. Dun, dun, dun. All right, that's the end of chapter 8, guys. So, are you all getting a little more intrigued? I don't know. I am. I know it's a slow-going book, but all the stuff, well, this chapter was called The Lawyer Swap. There's just so many weird shenanigans and so many things that cannot easily be explained. I don't know. What do you guys think? Did you think anything in that particular little piece was interesting? I know most of it was just the conclusion piece, which kind of recapped what was said in the beginning, and then talked about the strange little guy that I erroneously thought was Manson. The way my brain works, though, I want to go look up all these reports and newspaper articles, magazine articles, but it is probably possible, but you probably just have to have a lot of subscriptions to things that I don't. And I think if I did, then I told you my bedroom's full of books. But we've seen that shot of Tom O'Neill many times where his little house or his little apartment is just notebook upon notebook upon notebook. And I feel like if I went down every rabbit trail that I wanted to or that was mentioned, I do go down a lot of rabbit trails, I'm not gonna lie. But finding these articles, printing them, keeping them, scanning them, whatever, that my house would probably quickly be overcome by it. And that wouldn't be good for my brain, probably. But anyways, I do find it intriguing. Like I said, there will be some tie-ins with the JFK assassination stuff. I mean, it was all in that same kind of time period. That was 1963, the assassination was. This was only 6 years later. And it was in, well, obviously the JFK assassination was not in LA, but the Robert Kennedy assassination was. And so some of the same people crop up, but that one guy, Schiller, he was from LA, and he went to Dallas and talked to Jack Ruby. So you just never know. You never know what weird little thing is going to pop up from that time. And the CIA at that time was so, just the stuff I've read, I find it so interesting. Like the Cold War era CIA stuff is mind-blowing to me. And I could spend, it's obviously not that popular of a topic with my viewers, but man, I could certainly spend all my time on it if I wasn't careful. But you guys probably wouldn't like that. Anyways, all right, guys, wishing me luck on my airplane flight. I don't like to fly. I hate it, in fact. So this will be posted long after I am back, hopefully in one piece. And I will report back on the John Benet Ramsey murder house. I don't know if it looks different from on the outside, but I've seen pictures of it now on the inside, and I don't know if you know much about that case. I think everyone does, but the basement where she was found is now completely revamped. It's beautiful. It's finished. It's like a, well, I'll find some pictures if you guys are interested. If you're not interested, I won't bother you with that, but it's been totally redone. But I don't know about the outside. If the outside's going to be like a weird thing for me to see, I don't know if I'll get a weird vibe from it or not. Incidentally, my new job, I don't know if you guys are into true crime, but there was a pretty famous case, 10 years ago or so, the Jodi Arias case. She murdered her boyfriend. That was a pretty famous case in Arizona, and my new job is right in the same neighborhood that it happened. So I'm like, ooh, should I go look at that house too? But I don't want to be some creepy lurker outside, but I'm sure people do. I'm sure people do, because that's just what happens when crazy stuff goes on in a house. I don't know. Maybe it's not good for my mind. We'll see. We'll see how I do with it. I'll look at John Benet's house, and then I'll see if the Jodi Arias house, it's going to be right by, kind of close to my new job. So, and then again, if you guys are not interested in that, I will spare you for sure. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully I have a bunch edited in the airport/airplane tomorrow, and I'll see you guys soon. All right, take care. Bye.